Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening and watching, and welcome to the show. Today's special guest, Hanna Forrest, is an ADHD specialist and a parent trainer. So, Hanna, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy that I'm here. Thank you for having me. This is such an important topic, ADHD, right? And IEPs and everything. I have been an ADHD coach now for about 8 or so years. I have ADHD, the combined type, so I've got double the fun when it comes to ADHD. And I'm a parent to a child with ADHD, and I am everything ADHD. So I'm super familiar with all of the struggles that come along with it, but also, there are numerous strengths that do come along with it too, that we don't talk enough about. I grew up in Tokyo, Japan, where, and it was in the 70s, I'm going to age myself, but, it's not a culture that, really sort of celebrates the effervescent type of person, which is what I was. Super lively with the H part of the ADHD. But, growing up there, there were so many struggles that do come along with ADHD. So I decided to devote my life and career to helping children primarily, but by default, then helping, of course, the parents too, and how to parent children with ADHD, because there are specific ways. So that's just a little snippet.
It's interesting that you say that in Japan, because here in the States, I'll date myself too. In the 70s and 80s, ADHD wasn't even recognized as a school issue.
I know.
And I remember they would say that's a medical issue. It's a medical diagnosis.
Yes.
And you couldn't get the kids supports.
Yeah.
And that was even after special ed became a little bit more acceptable. Because originally It was like, you don't want your kid special ed. No, you're not special ed.
Right.
And then it became more accepting, but ADHD was a medical thing. Like, nope, it's not educational.
Right.
And we get to that a lot. And then I'm curious, CADDC, what does that stand for?
Certified ADHD coach.
There we go.
Although,
okay, thank you.
Now, it is ADHD, and they've kind of knocked off, it's only ADHD that it's referred to now. So it's either the inattentive type or the hyperactive type, and then there's the combined type as well. So, but that's what that stands for.
Right. Which, it makes me crazy that they do that, because inattentive type is not hyperactive type.
Right.
So why that,
why just leave the H in there? And, I don't know.
Why not just get rid of the H? Right?
I'm disappointed that Dr. Russell Barkley has retired, because, he's the king of all research related ADHD information. But yeah, just so that he can help continue to clarify, but that's okay. There are folks like us out there trying to sort of walk in his very big footsteps. So,
right. And it's a challenge I find often with schools, because I know when I was a teacher way back when, and the teacher training, ADHD, you think of the hyperactivity.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially our girls that present very differently, they're overlooked because they're out in, they're in the back, they're quiet, they're not causing issues. They're daydreaming is what everybody thinks, and they say,
right,
quit daydreaming. And it's like, they can't quit daydreaming. That's the ADHD,
right?
Supports.
Yeah, it's really tricky, but it's also heartwarming to know that this is evolving and changing, and the education on ADHD is constantly changing. and that it's more prevalent there. More information is out there. So I think the awareness is growing, which is terrific. But to your speaking about schools in particular, it's really tricky to expect teachers. They don't tend to have a very great understanding of ADHD in particular, right? It's not their fault. They don't get a whole lot of training on it. And there are so many specific ways in which we learn, whether it's the girl in the back of the class, that has inattentive type, or the hyperactive boy. I mean, I was both. But, there's a lot more that is evolving in the education of it. And I'm hoping that spills sort of over to schools and teachers that really need that assistance,
Right.
and
Yeah.
help.
And I don't blame the teachers at all. Like, I've been there, I know, like
Yeah.
they can't. And the reason the hyperactive type gets noticed more is because it's interrupting the class more.
Right.
And so as much as we try to focus on everybody, when one is taking away, they get noticed and get looked into.
Right. The squeaky wheel.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's why, it's funny that you say that. I was talking to another parent this morning about when I was a teacher, that I used to say, I don't want to be that parent. And now that I'm a mother, I am happy to be that parent, because we have to, and that's why, a lot of what I do what I do because I want to help other families and parents learn how to advocate for their children.
Right. And that is such a valuable tool. I mean, parents, when their child gets diagnosed, they basically have one option that their pediatrician, generally speaking, offers, which is medication. There isn't a sort of, oh, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, which is unfortunate. But of course, we can keep trying to change that too. But so what you do is so incredibly important, being sort of the hub of being that support for parents is so critical. They just kind of get this diagnosis and they're just swimming out there in, information land, and they don't know what to take. So kudos to you for what you do. It's hugely important.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why my YouTube channel and the show developed, was because talking to more families. And, I've talked to a lot of families that come to me and I'm like, you know what? Yes, I could help you get a really good IEP, but honestly, I think the money is better spent this way.
Right.
In supporting your child, because I'm very child focused.
Right.
And
Me
that's
too.
why I was so excited to have you on, because you do the parent training.
Right. Right.
And that is so needed, because the teachers do what they can with the IEP, but if the parents aren't reinforcing stuff at home,
right,
or don't know what to be asking for.
Right.
So how does that work? Like the parent training, like what do you do? Do you have classes? Is it individual?
Yeah. So, there are a number of different parent training courses out there that you can take in companies, that's specifically train parents. And it is really important for parents to first and foremost understand that there is a particular way to parent a child that has ADHD. There is, and they should learn it so that they don't go crazy, because right now they're probably going crazy. Right. And so although my goal is my end goal is to help children and their self-confidence, because when that goes awry, which it does for all of us with ADHD, it's really hard to repair, right? For lack of a better term. So coaching the parents and teaching them how to parent a child with ADHD is critical, first and foremost. It's called parent behavior training, essentially. Now, it runs the gamut, right? So the way that I coach parents is basically from the 8 primary, there are more, but executive function areas that we struggle with, stemming from our prefrontal cortex, which is all fuzzy up here. This is where the doing of things is housed in our brains. And this is where the knowing of things is housed. And our knowing of things is fine. It has nothing to do with intelligence. And, that word is getting out. But there are ways. Let me give you a simple example of something that happens every day, all the time with parents. They are asking their son, Johnny, who has ADHD, to, okay, Johnny, go upstairs and get your PJs on, brush your teeth, and don't forget to whatever it is. Johnny then goes upstairs and he sees a little fuzz on the stair and he picks at it and he looks at it. And so far he's heard what his parents have asked him to do, but he has just lost 2 out of the 3 things, right? It's just gone from his working memory. And so by the time he gets up to the top of the stairs, he probably can pick out, oh, teeth. Maybe I need to brush my teeth, right? And then the other things sort of get forgotten. And what, unfortunately, if the parent isn't fully aware of the working memory, being able to hold information and then executing a task, if they aren't aware that that's an executive function that their child is struggling with, they may see that lack of following direction as being disrespectful. And then so the parent goes straight to being angry. So first of all, my greatest joy is being able to lift the parent's stress level, right? I'm bringing down their blood pressure and I'm raising their child's self-esteem is really what my goal is, so that they don't have to get angry at the fact that their child didn't do the X, Y, and the Z. Basically, all you need are strategies. So in that case, you can have something that's written down on the wall in different colors that the child can check off and having done. So it's very simple things, but without knowing that and learning that, the poor parents are in this constant state of stress and anger and frustration. And when the child, receives all of that stress and anger and frustration, it wreaks immense havoc on their self-worth, because they are saying to themselves, why can't I just blah, blah, blah? When my sister Sally doesn't have a problem with it, what's wrong with me as a person? And that's what the child thinks. And it has nothing to do with their intelligence or their person. It's just the front of their brains. And even having the parents really grasp the fact that their children, this is a developmental disorder, and that they are up to 3 years behind in that, right? So when it comes to self-control, task initiation, doing a chore, and their child is still sitting there and you've asked them to do it over and over again, to understand that they are up to 3 years behind in their development will give the parent more sort of sense of calm, of not getting so frustrated that their child isn't doing blah, 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 whatever it is. So that was a long roundabout way of explaining that essentially parent training is there to relieve the stress. At least that's my goal, to relieve the stress for parents, and to also raise the self-worth of their child, because I coach both parents and the child.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, the show's called Stress-Free IEP. That's what I'm all about, because being a parent myself, it's hard.
Yes.
And like most recently, I've been working on not losing my temper as much.
Yeah.
Which is
it's
a challenge.
So hard.
It's so hard. But I started realizing, like, when I elevate, my child elevates.
Yep.
And it gets into this thing, and none of what we want to get done gets done.
Right.
Where like now, if I just keep myself down, so she gets elevated and frustrated and yelling at me, and it's like, I do understand that you're upset right now.
Right.
But we need to do this, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Or whatever
It's
it might
so
be.
hard. It's so hard.
It is.
So my middle child has ADHD, and because she's a teen now too, that explosive anger and frustration it is so incredibly difficult for parents to remain calm throughout all of that. But again, one of the things that I really bring home to parents is that when the child is in that state of, emotional, just complete meltdown, there's literally nothing that you can do to stop it at that moment, right? Because the blood has literally left the prefrontal cortex and they are in fight and flight. So another thing that, I coach parents on is to keep in mind, like I keep bringing back those executive functions so that when they're in that, they can then just sort of take a deep breath and understand that there's nothing that they can do to change that child's temperament at that moment, right? And like you said, to then thereafter talk about it is super important. But even, what to say to the child. And there are so many components to ADHD and understanding, how to best parent them. It's just, it can't be taught enough.
Right.
Can't get it out there enough,
Yeah. No, and it is so important because I hate the word disability. I hate
I
the
know.
IEPs and stuff like that. It's just like, I'm now like looking at how, yes, we need IEPs, obviously. We need
Yeah.
that, all of that. But a lot of times kids then feel different and that something's wrong with them,
Right.
and
Right.
growing up myself, my story, I couldn't spell. I thought I was stupid because I couldn't spell.
Yeah.
Well, my brain just didn't work that way.
Right.
I was on law review. Obviously, I could write. Spelling
Yeah.
wasn't that important,
Right.
like,
Right.
and that's the thing. And it's like, so I know as a parent myself, when my kids come home and they're not doing well in their spelling, and I'm like, Daddy didn't spell well and Mommy didn't spell well, you don't really have much of a chance there.
Right.
We'll try, we'll study, but
Right. Yeah.
like,
And what you are saying to yourself by doing that is you are letting some of the smaller things go. And I think that's where we get tripped up as parents, myself included. I mean, I'm constantly having to remind myself about all of these things, right? Even though I know them, when you're the parent and you're in it, it's so much harder to sort of talk yourself down from the ledge, which is why a parent coach is so important to, reinforce with that parent what they're doing that's effective and what they can change. But the letting go of some of the smaller things is so critically important in saving your sanity as a parent. It really is. When my 16-year-old is having a meltdown, sort of spouting back, I really am focused on what to let go of and what not to let go of, what's really important. And being able to let go of things that are smaller is such an important life-saving skill, sanity-saving skill to really acquire and to learn. So that's good. Good for you.
Thanks. Yeah. Not that I'm perfect, because trust me, we have
No, none of us are. None of us are.
And it's hard. Like, we say it all the time, like, raising children, period, is hard.
Yeah.
And then, they don't come with instruction manuals. What you did with your first child is not going to work with your second or third child.
Nope.
And anywhere in between. And
No.
it's just, I used to tell my dad all the time, like, yeah, you screwed up when we were little, but you did the best you could with what you knew.
Right.
And I've gotten over it.
Why isn't there more training? So with all of my education, another point, I was the director of coaching for a company called Soccer Shots, which a lot of parents might know. It's a franchise for soccer for really little children all the way up until about early tweens. And during that time, I needed to teach college age coaches on how to manage groups of children, either 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, but groups of 10 of them, right? And so during that time, way back when, I learned an immense amount about childhood development, what a 3-year-old can and can't do, what a 6-year-old should be expected to be able to do. And I was just like, why are we not being taught this in college? Like, this should be a prerequisite for being a parent, for sure, because it helped me to be so much more patient. Right. And so with kids with ADHD, they're 3 years developmentally behind. And so you wouldn't ask an 11-year-old or a 10-year-old to do a certain chore if they have ADHD that a 7-year-old, couldn't do. Right. Or would. Right. The opposite. So yeah. It's just really important to understand those things. And we have to be taught it. And I think that there is a stigma around saying that out loud, because a lot of people feel, well, I wasn't raised that way, so I don't need to X, Y, and Z. And I don't get it. I don't get it. If they just learn, then they would say, oh, of course you need this information. So it's a tricky tightrope to walk.
Yeah. And it's, because we were brought up in the era of you did what your parents say.
Right.
Or, I don't know about you, but a lot of families were, or you were backhanded,
right.
which isn't necessarily a good thing. And I definitely don't, agree with it at
right.
all. But
right.
We were brought up that that's what you did. You did what your parents told you.
Right.
That's not working with our children these days.
It isn't. And I don't think it ever did work, honestly, because when I wasn't heard or felt understood, because I was quickly dismissed, or you just do this because I said so kind of a directive, I just remember how it felt. And I think that's where I succeed a lot too, is that I am still that child. I remember everything in feeling, maybe not in memory so much, but I remember all of those feelings. And that's why I connect to children so well too. And I'm able to help them out through my coaching. But the way that whomever our parents parented was for a different world, just like you're saying. And with their availability to so much more information than we ever had, I can't imagine myself at 13 years old with social media.
I'm with you. I'm like, thank God it wasn't there.
I don't even.
But I know.
I don't know.
I
don't know how I would have survived, especially, there's rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, which a lot of us ADHDers struggle with, right? So I can just imagine, I got sort of bullied at some point. All of us probably, got teased and whatever. But when we've got ADHD, it gets magnified. We catastrophize, that's a part of it. And I just can't imagine what it would be like. I don't even pay attention to my own comments on my own social, because it can have such a long lasting effect, especially for us ADHDers. So yeah, I could talk about that forever.
But then, so that's where you come in, that you help the children and the parents not catastrophize.
Right. Well, to at least, so we can't not do things, right? So that's part of having ADHD, but at least being aware of it, you can say, okay, that's right. I'm just catastrophizing right now. Chill out. That's just my brain. Then you can move on. We can't fix ADHD. Obviously, there's medication that primarily, and, I'm not necessarily for or against. I don't give, I'm not a doctor. Right. So I do know what it can do for children, and it can work miracles if you are on the right medication, especially for those of us who struggle a great deal with impulsivity. It really gives you that pause before that child decides to push Johnny across the classroom. So where was I going with that? There goes my working memory.
Well, with the medication,
my working memory.
What the medication does. And it's interesting, because I was talking with somebody actually today about her child, and they tried the medication route. Yeah. And when he was doing his math work, he was like on target, doing great. Yeah. The next day doing writing, 3 hours later, he still hadn't done the assignment. And the mom asked him, like, why? He goes, well, the medication is helping me focus.
Right.
But it's not giving me the motivation or the desire to do the other thing.
Right.
I like math. I don't like writing.
Bingo. That's exactly, that is the key. So parents, again, will often say sort of, why can he focus for 10,000 hours on his video game? And we have a problem with motivation when we aren't interested in something. And I can't stress to everybody enough that this is a physical thing that happens with our brains. It's as though it doesn't get turned on. And if it's something that isn't interesting, it is almost physically painful for us to have to try to concentrate on it. It is incredibly difficult. And, we can hyperfocus when we're interested. So that's just another fact. And these kinds of things that I coach parents on, you have to remind them of these things in different situations every single time you meet, because you can't explain it once and have them say, oh, that's right, that's because of this and this and this. So yeah, there's a lot of tricky sort of parts to parent training. I think one of the things that's also tricky is getting them to understand the medical aspect of it. So I'm also a neurofeedback technician. And when I had my QEEG done, which is basically a scan of the brain waves, right, where the activity is and all of that, the whole prefrontal cortex was just red, meaning not working very well. Everything back here was green.
Wow.
And it was so exciting the very first time I saw that, because it was just validation, right? This is an actual medical condition, right? Where your prefrontal cortex is it's dysregulated. And that's kind of a hard thing to explain. I basically tried to explain that it's foggy, and your kids need glasses to see things clearly. And those glasses are strategies that you implement in the household to make their lives run smoother, so that they remember things and they follow through on things. And yeah, I mean, gosh, I could go on and on about all sorts of things, but
yeah, it's also the strategies that they need to be learning at school.
Yes, it's the same thing.
I do have to say, finally, executive functioning is the other thing that schools are now understanding and teaching and offering.
Right.
Because again, it used to be, but it's not academic. And it's like,
right.
If a child's not maintaining assignment due dates, how is that not academic?
Right.
It's not reading and math. They have the skill, but they're not maintaining what needs to be done.
Right.
It's just,
so like for ADHD, it's not happening because it's not right in front of them. So you literally should have, here's a little takeaway for at home, homework assignments or whatever. There should be a planner. It should be above wherever your child is doing their schoolwork on whatever computer. It can't be stored in the computer on tabs. If it's there, if it's like that, we can't see it. It literally has to be in front of our faces for us to go, oh, that's right, I need to do math, and just looking at it, that's critical for us. Out of sight, out of mind is just, yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's teaching, like, yes, the school has to do a lot, but as a parent, yes, it's frustrating and it's annoying to make all these checklists and make all this stuff and do this extra work, but that's our job as parents.
I know.
To help raise our children.
And it's only annoying at the beginning because it's new, right? This is the excited part. I mean, I get so excited. I'm like, okay, yes, you're going to be very annoyed, rolling your eyes at Coach Hanna, AKA Coach Banana, to the kids all the time, because I'm going to be asking you to do this again. I got to add this. I got to add this. Yes, but it's for a short period of time because it's new. It feels like it's a lot. Once you get into the habit of just having that planner up there and the child can look up and understand, and see what they need to do, then there's more autonomy. They can start doing things on their own more. And to piggyback on that, a huge takeaway to any parent out there listening, one of the most important things to change within your household to make things run smoother is to have a very strict routine. Not so much strict, but a routine that you can adhere to that is the same every single day. So for example, so the more things are, the more children know what to expect with ADHD, not with ADHD, but when they have ADHD, when they know to expect things, their life will run far more smoothly. When there are new things popping into their lives that they were not ready for, that's when meltdowns ensue. And so creating a routine, whether it be for this summer or the school year, have them still wake up at 9 or 9:30. I'm not necessarily talking about the older teens. Again, this is where parent training, is specific to different age groups, right? So, but generally speaking, having a routine to follow for their child just makes that life so much easier for the parent, because it's the same every day. They know what to expect, far less meltdowns, all that.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, yeah, if I could stick to a routine, it would be nice,
I know.
right? Even for myself, but I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. I probably have a little there somewhere. But like having a routine is helpful because it's just, like I know we used to try to plan meals ahead of time and stuff like that, and it never happens. And then we wind up like, what are we doing for dinner tonight? And, all of that stuff. Whereas if we knew Mondays were going to be meat, Tuesdays is going to be vegetarian, you know what I mean? At least a topic to do. It can be so helpful.
Yeah. And then how specific do you get on that routine? Right. And then what do you let go and what don't you let go of? And all of these things, they're best dealt with, people who, parent trainers essentially. And there are a lot of good companies out there, So, it's just critical.
Yeah. So your program, I think it's called Conquering ADHD Behaviors. So how is that different from others that are out there? Like what makes you special? Like what's your, well, you're special in your own, but you know what I mean? Like, there's so many out there right now, like
there are
ADHD coaches and like, how do you know? Like what?
There are a lot of companies and coaches out there. What makes mine different is that I coach the children as well. So I work on, the different executive functions. It's a 6-week course, essentially. I work with the parents anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, and this can include grandparents and any caregiver. So it's important to get as many people together to learn about this. It's once a week as you can, you might as well. Grandparents and even babysitters and whatnot often join the parents. And then thereafter, and so I'm coaching them on the different executive functions. And then we go into their different struggles throughout so some households struggle mostly with homework time. Some households struggle mostly with, explosive behavior and whatnot. And so it's very specific to whomever has signed up. So the 45 minutes to an hour with the caregivers, and then either 35 minutes to 20 minutes, it depends on the child, it depends on the day, is focused on raising that child's self-worth and self-esteem and focusing on their strengths. So I do a strengths assessment. We do a lot of one-on-one coaching of the kids, or I do around their ADHD. So teaching them about it, and then exploring their strengths. They already know what their weaknesses are, but every child, I'm telling you 1000%, if they haven't gotten any coaching or training, they are attributing all of their weaknesses as a moral failing or just a personal failing on their part. We all do.
Right.
Because, that's the response we get from society, because we aren't able to do the easier things. But we are very intelligent in many ways and have a ton of strengths. And so it's uncovering those that is super important. I just wish I could help fewer children get into trouble for things that they can't control. It just makes me tear up, when they can't control something.
Don't even get me started on that.
And they're getting screamed at. Yeah.
The work I did, in the delinquency courts, it just, like it's such a challenge. And even, my manifestation and determination meetings and stuff, it's just like, how can you say it's not? Well, they know better. I'm like, no, they don't.
No. Yeah. They don't.
Like, yes, they can tell you right now they know better, but in that moment,
right,
they don't have that process.
Yes, it's all involuntary, right? A lot of their reactions are involuntary reactions to whatever is happening around them. They need to learn also the skills, the social skills, and all sorts of different things too.
Yeah. And I love that you were saying about the strengths, because that's one of the things that's hard at IEP meetings, and that I, tell the parents, it's going to be a lot of what your child can't do.
Right.
And that's what it's focused on. And I'm like, as a society, we need to figure out, like, this is where the education system needs a complete overhaul. What can your child do?
Right.
Let's focus on that stuff.
Yes.
Like, okay, every child's not going to be able to spell. Why are we doing weekly spelling tests?
Right.
Like, yes, I understand you need to learn to spell, but in reality, who knows how to spell these days?
Right. Predictive
writing,
So if we can't change that, right? The likelihood of us being able to change that is pretty slim. However, we can say, okay, teacher A, here's a stack of, cards where the words that they need to spell are now put into a song with a rhyme. And that you're going to give to your kids to take home who have ADHD. And that's going to be their way to learn those words. Like, they need those tools, right? Like, if we hear something and we can sing it, or, we've got chopsticks and we're drumming to like the A, B, C, D,
Right.
whatever it is, that will sink in for us. And so the teacher then needs to have those tools ready and available. So maybe that's what we need to create, more of a package of, I don't know, some kind of like toolbox for the teachers, not just teaching them, this is what you should know, and this is how you should respond to a child with ADHD. But here are the tangible things that you can give your child with ADHD to take home to study for spelling, to study for math, like create something like that. See, that's one of our strengths, is we have great ideas. We just can't implement them.
Right. Exactly. No, and it's true, because I remember, so I was originally a general ed teacher, a general education teacher, and then I went back for my master's in special ed. And I remember in the classes, like, why didn't they teach this to general education teachers?
Right.
Because it's not like the techniques you're using to teach an ADHD child is not going to work on a neurotypical.
Right.
It's going to work on everybody.
Yes, it does. Yes,
and
it does.
I do have to say, Montgomery County has gotten better, at least with math, with how they're teaching math in all the different ways.
Yeah.
It's still mind-boggling for us that learned how to carry the one with the decomposing, whatever the heck that is.
I know. Decomposing numbers.
But it's still a different way to help tap into the kids that do it differently.
Right.
And
it
needs to happen everywhere.
Yes, for sure.
So I feel like we could talk forever. And I just noticed, like, right? What's such an important topic, and it's just, like, I love that you're open and honest, that you have ADHD, you have ADHD children. And I think that's where the connection is.
Yeah.
Of how somebody is better, because, like, I don't say better, but how do you know a coach is a good fit?
Yeah, I think they should either have, so they don't have to have ADHD, right? But the what's happening with the children internally, if you want to work specifically on your child's self-worth, if you feel like that's a super important piece of it, then definitely hire a coach that has ADHD, because we can relate on a level that others can't really. Right. They can learn about it, but it's that deep sort of, I don't know if it's like a dislike for your, just the really bad, poor self-esteem that we tend to have because of everything that we've gone through as children. It's really important for the parent to have somebody that really understands that to the core, so
right.
Yeah.
And
also, I know that we have to go, because I could keep talking forever and ever, but I do want to say that because of the fact that ADHD is so, it's a mostly hereditary disability, which we don't like to say, but it is. The parents are struggling in a different way too. So parents who have ADHD, they absolutely need to understand themselves. And also, it's amazing. I find parents that have ADHD are harder on their children that have ADHD. I think because they struggled so badly, they don't want their child to struggle the way that they did. So they're so much more intense about, don't do this or don't do that, because they know the repercussions. Yeah. And so that's important for them to grasp their own, to learn all about it. Because we need our own parenting help, us people that have ADHD.
I know it takes a village.
It does. Right? I thank God for people like you, though. I'm so happy that there are people like you out there.
And I think that there's people like you, because it's the same thing that parents, you get that new diagnosis. Parents don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. Yeah. It's, I still get people say, really? Like, there's education attorneys?
Yeah.
I'm like, right? Like, yeah, we're there.
Good
There's
for you
people
for
to help
making
you.
some noise.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I know all your information is going to be in the show notes underneath and will be posted. This has been so awesome.
It has been. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And keep on keeping on. All the good work.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. I appreciate you.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.